G'day, welcome back to the show. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. As we all know, it is grand final week. I hope you have Sunday cleared out. If you've got a wedding on, tell them you're not coming. If you've got anything else on, tell them you're busy, because Sunday is the day of the final game of the NRL season, and it's going to be a really, really good one. A 2006 rematch. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about a few things today. We're going to review the prelim finals, a few takeaways from those couple of games. Then we're going to talk about our top 10 players in the grand final. I told you when I did the top 10 players in the final series that there was going to be more. There was going to be more lists. So we'll get through our top 10 players of the two teams remaining, and then we'll have a bit of a grand final preview where I'll give you my final prediction for the final game of the year. So let's get into it. Let's start with discussing the Sharks versus Storm from the past weekend. You'd know the Storm won. That's why they've advanced to the grand final. The Storm were just a class above. And that is the case for the Storm a lot. We talked about it last week. We said who's going to maintain their identity the best, and that will determine the winner. And that kind of played out exactly like that. The Storm's identity is systematic, know your job, coached very well with high-class players. And they showed their class against the Storm. The big three had a big game. Harry Grant was able to do a lot of things out of hooker. Cameron Munster was able to do what he does best, break the line open, line breaks, tackle breaks, all that good stuff. And then Jerome Hughes, in his return game, had an absolute blinder. With the injury that he did, the quick return, the rush to get back into the final series because every game was an eliminator at this point, he had an absolute blinder. An absolute blinder. So the big three had big games, all had big moments. The Sharks hung around for the best part of half the game, maybe 50, 60 minutes. But then the Storm they kind of just ran away with it at the end. The Storm were just able to capitalize on their opportunities much better than Cronulla did. Cronulla would give away a few penalties, and it was the Storm they're just too classy to not punish their opposition for the cheap ball that they were able to gain. Cronulla, whilst they did go further than past years, it is an improvement. But they lost because you saw the same mistakes by the same players once again, and the same players not stepping up to the occasion once again. Trindle had a couple of good moments, but he gave away consecutive penalties in the Storm's 20. Hines just, we talked about it last week. He plays on confidence. He was high on confidence, and he had a hand in a couple of good things, but then a drop ball here, a bad kick there, and it just plays with him. It plays with him. Blake Brayley, I think he still had a good game. He was able to do a lot out of hooker, a lot of meters gained. As we all know, he's a tackling machine. So he was a bit of a bright light in an otherwise underwhelming Sharks performance. But I don't think it's more so how bad Cronulla played, because I don't think they played that bad of a game. I just think that the Storm were able to do what they wanted to do. And at that level, in that type of environment, with a lot on the line, most of those Storms players have been there before. They've done that job before, whilst Cronulla, most of them, they've been struggling to get out of the first round of the finals. So you saw that experience, that imbalance of experience kind of rear its head, and the Storm were able to prevail and make their way to another grand final. Penrith Broncos. Boy, was I wrong. I was off. I gave the Broncos no hope in that game. I would say to Broncos supporters, I'd say to Penrith supporters, so how much are Penrith going to win by? Or how many points are Broncos going to lose by this weekend? I wrote them off real early. I thought Penrith were just similar to Melbourne. I thought Penrith were just far too experienced at that high level, far too systematic. Far too much structure in their attack and their defense. I thought they were able to just grind out Broncos, stuff them, dominate time of possession, dominate field position. I thought that's what the Panthers were going to do to Brisbane. And in the first half, it kind of looked like that was the case. Panthers had an excellent first half, 30 minutes to the first half, but the Broncos, they stuck around. They managed to find a way to break open the Panthers' line, and they just found the line. And then they ended up finding the line again and again, and they did enough to win. And what an upset. And it signifies not the end of this incredible grand final run by Penrith. 4 straight victories, 5 straight grand final appearances. It's not the end because they're such a high-class level and they will have so many of their core returning next year. And a lot of their core are pretty young too. Let's not forget about that. They've got a few more years in them together should they all stay at Penrith. But it just signifies the end of this consecutive run. They'll be back to a grand final, no doubt about that. They're too good. They're too good and too structured, and they have such a good system set in place for them not to achieve at a high level once again. But the Broncos, you have to give them credit. I gave them no respect. I gave them no credit leading up to this game, but you have to give it to them now. They didn't even break through Penrith. They just offloads, second phase footy. 1 tackle break was all it took, and they were able to do some freakish stuff and get to the line, and Reece Walsh had his hand in lots and lots of things, and Adam Reynolds is building confidence now and at the perfect moment. So I just think that whilst Penrith, they didn't win, they didn't make it to the big game this year, they'll be back because they're just, like we mentioned, they're just too good of a club, not only a team, not only a coach, not only a player, they're too good of a club to not be back at that highest level again in the near future. So there you have it. That's the prelim review. And now you have a Storm Broncos 2025 grand final coming up this Sunday, 7:30 p.m. 7:30 p.m. Why? I remember growing up, it was 3 o'clock. Then it was 4 o'clock. Then it was 6 o'clock or 6:30. Then it was 7. Now it's 7:30. It might even be 8. The coverage might start at 7:30. I'm not sure, but it just keeps getting pushed back and back and back. And it's not like we're adding games too. We've got the state championship, got the NRLW game, and then you've got the main game. So I don't know why. Maybe it's so because more and more people are working more and more weekends and working those 6-7 days on the weekends. Maybe they're pushing it back so that people can still watch it, get as much viewership as possible. That might be a reason, but nevertheless, we're going to watch it, and I hope you're watching it too. Well, I assume you are. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening or watching this. All right. Before we get into a bit of a preview of the big game, let's talk about the 10 best players in this grand final. Out of the Broncos and out of Melbourne, there are 10 best players. There are a lot of good players, but we've only got a list of 10. So who would that be? First, at 11, just missing the clip, I've got Adam Reynolds. Now, when you hear Adam Reynolds is at 11 and doesn't even make the top 10 list, you got to know that there's a lot of good players in this grand final. Ben Hunt was also floating around that 11 to 12 mark. They're just post-prime. They're just not quite at that level anymore. All right, at number 10, Patrick Carrigan. He comes in from suspension, and I betcha he's willing to make a huge impact in this game. He would have felt like he let down the boys in the prelim final, not being able to take part in that. We all know he's a world-class player. He does a job for Broncos. He does a job for the Maroons, and he also does a job for Australia. He's going to be heavily involved, I reckon. So look for a good game from him, as you can expect, because he's had a good season. He's had a good couple of seasons. So he's at 10. At number 9, Eli Katoa. We all know what a bloody dangerous weapon he is on and off the ball. Off kicks, short balls, hitting that beautiful line off the half, especially close to the try line. He is very skillful for a big fella. So he's at 9. At 8, Katoni Staggs. A return to form season for Katoni. Couple of years ago, had a massive season. Played Origin, and then he's been a bit quiet for the last season or two, but this year he has stepped back into that bright light and he's been outstanding, and he's at 8. Number 7, Xavier Coates. Similar to Katoni, kind of had a little bit of a quiet couple of years for his standard, but this year he's been incredible. He has been an absolute airplane for the Melbourne Storm. Put it up and he will manage to find that ball and get it down to the try line. He's at 7 because he has been a freak this year. At number 6, Ryan Pappenhausen. I don't know if he's just not 100% fully healthy or what it is, but he just hasn't been able to put together the types of performances that we're used to from Ryan. I think, we saw it in 2020. Was it 2020 or 2019 whenever Melbourne won their last grand final? He was the Wally Lewis medal winner. He had a great game there, so we can kind of expect him to not be afraid of this occasion. He will step up to the mark. He will have a good game in this grand final, but he's at 6 just because he's been a little bit inconsistent this year. At number 5, the big fella, Payne Haas. He is a monster, and he went through a bit of a quiet period after that Origin series, but he's coming back strong. He probably had a little bit of a rest, felt like he needed to refresh himself for the back end of the season and for a strong finals run, and he's had that, and now he's raring to go up against that Melbourne defence. So look out for Payne Haas to be an absolute monster and a meter eater coming up this Sunday. At number 4, now to preface these last 4, these players are so good at times. These last 4 players, I wouldn't be mad if you interchanged them in any order. 4, 1, 2, 3. They could all go in any of that order in the top 4. It kind of just depends on who played the best game last week. But these players are world class. These players play at the highest level consistently. At number 4, I've got Jerome Hughes. He could be higher if he played a couple more games recently, but his return to finals was amazing. He stood out so bloody hard, so tough too, to come back from that injury earlier than he probably would have if it was a regular season. And to play like that, so bloody tough. Tough Kiwi, I tell you. He's at 4. Number 3, Harry Grant. Again, missed some time. He's missed a lot of games this season. Hasn't put together the types of consistent season that we used to from him. But we all know what he can do. We know he's super talented. We know he has great vision from that hooker position, and we know he can manipulate the game too. He's very crafty. He would have learned a lot from Cameron Smith. He would have learned a lot, the ins and outs of the game, the nuances of the rules and the ruck and how to manipulate defenders, markers, the ref even. We know what he can do. He's very smart and he has great vision. At number 2, Reece Walsh. Putting him at number 2 has a lot to do with his finals form. He has been incredible and almost, not entirely, but almost single-handedly gotten the Broncos to where they are. If he didn't have that 10-minute period after coming out of the sin bin against Canberra, I don't think the Broncos would have won, and I don't think the Broncos would have then advanced. So I think he has been the most crucial player in this Broncos side for them to be in a position to win it all this year. So I'm as much of his off-field stuff bugs me, as immature as I find him sometimes, and I think the post-try celebrations probably could be left at home and not in front of the cameras or the crowd. As much as that stuff kind of irks me, I cut him some slack because he's young and he's in the media. It's never easy for anyone that heavily in the media. But he's so talented. You cannot deny the skills that this bloke has and what he can do when he is on. Because when he is on, he's one of the best performers in the game. So he's at 2, and that leaves one man and one man only. At number 1, Cameron Munster. We just spoke about what these other players can do. We all know what Cameron Munster can do because he consistently shows us how good of a player he is when it is the biggest moments, in the biggest, brightest lights, at the biggest occasions with the most on the line, Cameron Munster will step up and he will perform to his best ability for his teammates around him, for his club, for his state, for his country, for his family. This man is not afraid of the pressure. He loves it. He feeds off it. He's cool. He's calm. He's pretty chill out on that field and in post-game interviews and stuff. He's been here before. He can do it again. He's the number one best player out of these two teams in the grand final. And that's my list. A lot of these players could be interchangeable. It almost depends on how well they played that day. It will depend on where you rank them. But nevertheless, that's the top 10 best players in this grand final. If you don't like it, make your own. Lists are fun. Make your own. If you like it, cool. I'm glad we're on the same page. Like I said, those top four, though, those top four in particular are interchangeable on any day of the week. Any day of the week. I wouldn't be mad if Jerome Hughes was number 1 and Reece Walsh was 4. Or you had Harry Grant at 1 and Munster at 4. I wouldn't be mad at it. Those are just my opinion, though. But it does have a lot to do with the recent finals form. That's why Hughes is at 4. It's probably the lowest the previous Dally M medal winner's been on any list ever when you're ranking players. So that just shows you the caliber of player in this grand final. There's so many good players. There's so many good players that didn't make this list. What a game we have coming up. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the grand final for 2025. It's almost sad. It's almost sad that we have to say goodbye to another NRL season. But don't worry, missing it only makes it better for when it comes back around. Next March, we'll be hanging for it. We'll be hanging for some football. I believe the Storm will be too classy for the Broncos. Now, I'm not going to start this off like I did last week with my Penrith Broncos prediction. I'm not going to write off the Broncos entirely. I'm not clearing them off the page. I will give them the respect and I'll give them the credit that they have earned in this final series. The Broncos probably been the best performers in this final series with the inconsistencies that they've had over the season, with the suspensions, with the injuries, with the doubters. They've played well. They've got themselves to the grand final. No one did it for them but the Broncos. They've been coached really well. What a redemption for Michael Maguire. They've been coached incredibly well. I have to give them credit, and I can't count them out completely. I just can't do it. I won't do that to myself or to you guys again because I gave them nothing in the prelim final. I thought the Panthers would just absolutely roll them. I would have thought Panthers 13 plus. So I have to give them credit. They will stick around. It's a grand final. It's not going to be an easy game. It never is. Unless you're bloody, was it Manly that beat the Storm by 40 earlier in the century? But it's a grand final. It's going to be tough. Both teams will step up to the mark, and they're the two best teams in the NRL. That's why they're in the grand final, and that's why this game will be so close and be so interesting. But I think the Storm are too classy. I think the Storm have the better players. Now, we ran through that top 10 list. It was 6 Storm to the 4 Broncos. I just think the Storm have too much star power. They have too much structure. They're coached so well. Every man knows their job, and every man knows to do their job at the highest level that they can do. I'm not saying the Broncos can't do that. They definitely can. But the Broncos don't play on structure. They don't play on systematic attack and systematic defense. They kind of play with their eyes up football, second phase football. That's how they beat Penrith. That's kind of how they beat Canberra too, with Reece Walsh just getting the ball and doing what he saw available. And that can breed them so much success, but it can also break down their game and their game plan when they come up against an opposition like the Melbourne Storm. But I said something similar last week with the Panthers. So I'm not going to be so naive that I can't see a way for the Broncos to win, because I definitely can. As easy as it was for Munster and Grant and Hughes to poke through the Sharks' defensive line last week, Walsh can do that. Adam Reynolds can do that. Katoni Staggs can do that. So I will not write the Broncos off completely, but I do think the Melbourne will be a notch above in this game. Another thing, the Melbourne has so much experience in this game, whereas the Broncos, they would only have a handful of players with that type of experience. Adam Reynolds, Ben Hunt, they have that top level experience. Now, most of this team would have been there in 2023. Maybe a couple of them were there in 2015. Maybe even only one, Ben Hunt. But they just don't have that level of experience that Melbourne do. Grand final after grand final, grand final after grand final. Craig Bellamy, huge experience in balance against Michael Maguire. But they're just so exciting though when the Broncos play that off the cuff, unpredictable second phase football, that they can create opportunities for themselves that they just wouldn't have been there should they got into the grind of the game and just went set for set with Melbourne. Because if you do that, Melbourne will force errors, and you do what they did to Cronulla. Their opposition will give away a penalty, and the Storm are just too good not to score off it or get points off it in some way. So what I'm predicting, my final prediction for an NRL game, being it is the last NRL game of the season, I predict that the Storm will win 28-10. Now, that is a 3-try score difference. I think it'll be pretty close for the majority of the game, but I think towards the end we'll start to see Melbourne kind of run away with it. Just kind of slowly break down the Broncos and their game plan. I think Melbourne are a class above, like I mentioned, and with their experience, it's really hard to bet against Melbourne in this spot. That's why they are favourites, betting favourites. So that's it. That's my prediction. Storm win 28-10. Now, I'm not hugely confident on that scoreline. I'm confident enough to put money on Melbourne. I'm not confident enough that they'll win 13 plus, but that's just what came to mind. I can defend it. That's what I'm sticking to. My other prediction, Wally Lewis medal winner. This could go 5 different ways, but I am predicting a Jerome Hughes standout performance again. I think he would have gained so much confidence coming off that prelim game that he can perform at the level that he's used to, that his arm can withstand contact, running and tackling, that he can still do what he needs to do, because as much as it was a physical injury, when players return, it is a mental thing too. They need to let themselves believe again that they don't have to baby it. They don't have to protect it in every single part of the game, that they can let it go and it will be all right. So, Wally Lewis medal winner. Wait, have I been saying that wrong? Is it the Clive Churchill medal winner? I think it's the Clive Churchill. Wally Lewis is the origin man of the series. Whoops. Clive Churchill medal winner, Jerome Hughes. Put money on it. I think I put money on it. I think it was at $7, so pretty good odds if you can still get it at those odds. But that's going to do it. This will be the final episode of the NRL season. It's not the final episode of the year. Don't worry about that. We're going to talk about international football, and we'll review the grand final next week. We'll break it all down. We'll see where the winner went right. We'll see where the loser went wrong, and what it kind of means for their off season and the start of next season. We'll go through all that. We'll reevaluate the grand final, and we'll see if I know what I'm talking about, or whether I'm just some chump with a microphone that looks like they haven't watched a day of football in their life. We'll see, but that's going to be it. It's sad that it's the last game of the year, but it's exciting because it's the best game of the year. So get excited. Clear your schedule Sunday like we talked about. Forget that wedding. Forget that brunch. Who cares? Actually, you probably got time for a brunch. Forget that dinner, because you got games to watch. You got 3 exciting games, and then that last game at 7:30 p.m. will be an absolute classic. So don't miss it. enjoy it with whoever you're watching it with, and I'll see you next week to discuss it.